everyone, welcome to April Toast and Jam. Today I am joined by Travis and Alirio to talk about digital maturity. So these guys are the experts. I will let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Alirio.
Awesome. Well, thank you, G, for having us today here. Yeah, my name is Alirio. Background is in digital marketing. I've been doing this for over 10 years now. Before being at Jen Kelly, I've been working through Google campaigns, helping organizations set up their analytics. Last was at Amazon. So I have a little bit of an understanding on digital marketing from scratch. So if you have questions, I am happy to answer. And obviously, if you guys have questions, we're here to help you out.
Have all the questions. Okay, Travis, go for it.
Thanks. And I'm Travis MacDougall, Director of Digital Performance at Jan Kelly. I've been doing performance digital for about 12 years now, mostly working on enterprise brands, Apple, Air Canada, Mitsubishi, Johnson Insurance. So I kind of bring a little bit of a different perspective to the table, working with larger corporations and how to be able to evolve a company through their digital maturity and being able to see digital has actually matured over the last decade as well. So.
Cool. Well, I feel like the obvious question, at least for me, is what is digital maturity?
I believe that's the right question to start with, for sure. If we look at digital maturity, it's like a framework where organizations are able to evaluate where is your organization in terms of digital maturity, like how mature they are digitally. There are multiple frameworks out there, but the one that we looked at comes basically from Google and Boston Consulting Group. They collaborated together. And the rationale behind this is there is a belief, or there is a fact actually, that when you move along various stages in your digital maturity, your marketing campaigns and marketing overall becomes more effective and more cost efficient. I don't know if that helps you.
Yeah, so understanding it, it's like how far along your company is at adopting various digital technology.
I will say how savvy they are within the digital landscape.
Okay.
And if your organization has adopted that culture and the impact that it may have over the campaigns. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, no, that's definitely right for sure. Really, by adopting this framework, you can look at where your organization is sitting, to understand where you're really falling along this framework and understanding, okay, what are the next pieces that we need to work on as an organization to get us to the next level, to make us more effective, to make us more efficient. And yeah, it's really about establishing this roadmap that your company can use at all different levels of the organization to start moving towards a singular goal, which is customer-centric.
I like that approach because it's definitely one of the key elements is not only like you get to know where you are, but it helps you to develop a roadmap. And that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of organizations miss.
So a clarifying question, because you had mentioned campaigns and marketing, but Travis, you kind of made it seem like it was like a full company thing. It is full company, like digital adoption or digital transformation completely, including marketing?
I think marketing is maybe the entry point into the business, but in terms of what are the bigger business challenges that you're trying to solve, it's really around understanding your customer and the benefits that you can drive by understanding your customer needs even better, right? So yes, we look at it from a campaign perspective, but it really is an organizational alignment to focus towards this singularity of being customer focused.
Right. Okay, so thank you. That really helps. I am an organization and I am new to this topic. Like, where do you start in assessing your digital maturity?
That is a good question. I believe a lot of organizations ask the same thing. Okay, we know what it is. How do I get started on this? And to keep it simple, we'll basically, go through 4 stages. And from there, you can use it to develop this roadmap that we spoke before. So the 4 stages are nascent, emerging, connected, and multi-moment. And again, there are multiple frameworks out there, but the one we're using today is the one from Google and the Boston Consulting Group framework. From those various stages, then you'll understand what you need to do to get to the next steps. For the nascent one, I believe you, Travis, you might be the best to go and explain a little bit on it.
Yeah, sure. So nascent is really your starting point. You're not generating revenue based on data and analytics at this point. Most people in your organization have very little understanding of it, especially executives or senior management that maybe didn't grow up with digital technology and understanding that there's going to be performance fluctuations, but you don't really understand why. Hey, we ran a campaign, we saw we saw sales go up. Okay, why did they go up? Well, we don't understand. We just know that we ran a campaign and this happened, right? So you're not really able to connect the dots. And, so you might have a website, you might have analytics, you might have a company social page, but you really don't know how all the pieces really fit together.
So that clearly is your nascent. You are very beginning stages, right? What we find is a lot of the organizations, there is not a culture of we need to evolve with the data, we need to understand the data, we need to analyze the data. So if that's the case and you don't feel like you truly know what you're doing with your marketing efforts and how to track it and all that, I will mostly say that you are within the nascent stage.
Right. So if it's a cultural thing, which it kind of sounds like it is, what's your advice? Because I assume you guys come across this. What's your advice for people like trying to start talking about moving up in their maturity?
It's an organizational change. You need to have the right stakeholders internally. You need to have team members that are going to be able to drive this sort of change. And you also have to have upper management that, believes in what you're trying to do. It all really fall apart if upper management isn't aligned, or, sometimes upper management changes. But somebody might be coming out, they want to implement this, but then the next person coming in maybe isn't aligned or doesn't understand maybe what you're trying to accomplish. You really want to make sure that there's a need for it. You want to understand more about your customer, the journey, and ultimately what you're trying to solve as a business.
And I think we can also look at it from an angle of, are we seeing results from our marketing campaigns, our marketing efforts, right? In many cases, what happens is you're running a lot of these campaigns and you truly are not measuring the success of it. You don't know if it is working or not working. And is a perfect scenario where you need to say, okay, if we're going to continue investing on this, on digital marketing, then we make sure that we are not only learning, but also we're evolving. Another question that you can be asking yourself is, are we adapting quickly enough to the market changes? And a clear example for that will be COVID, right? And thanks God that we don't have a mask anymore at this point. So I'm so happy for that. But before that, we never expected this to happen. And organizations needed to adapt quickly. So if at this point you haven't started already having a conversation like this with your executives or with your teams, you should be doing it, because market changes happen and they happen abruptly and you need to be ready for it. So that's one. And then the other piece that we should all look at is competition, right? There are a lot of competitors already implementing this, and not doing that will let you be behind, will let you fall behind as an organization. And I believe digital transformation and digital maturity gives you the chance to be better for your customers, gives you the chance to do what's right for them. And it all starts, at least I love data. And because I love data, I will say that it all starts with the data, right?
Some people love data.
Exactly.
Good.
Spreadsheet for
We
some
need you.
I know it might be boring for a lot of people, but I love a big spreadsheet, right? And I'm like, those crazy numbers that we see I love them because they allow me to serve people better.
That's very nice.
It's very nerdy, right? Very nerdy.
It's honestly, people like you make the world go round. That's good. And you. Okay, so you were talking a little bit about sort of the ability to even pivot when things come up, and you mentioned COVID. And it made me think about these huge companies, multiple brands, potentially international. What about these guys?
Digital maturity definitely is for them as well, and it's usually meant to help solve complex challenges that are within an organization. The only challenge I think you'd have to face is if you are a house of brands and you have lots of companies that reside under one organization, getting all these different teams on board would be challenging. One team could be really great at digital transformation, pushing the envelope, but at the end of the day, there might be cross-channel or cross-sales opportunities that you're leaving on the table. And again, it would take senior leadership to really start pushing that sort of mandate for everyone to get on board with it. But absolutely, I would say these would be the types of companies that would greatly benefit from adopting digital maturity frameworks. Yeah.
Okay, well, you've sold me.
So the next stage after nascent would be emerging. So you're starting to get comfortable with first-party data. Like you have your analytics set up. You're able to look at it and say, okay, we're starting to see trends and correlations here. You're still not quite customer centric. You can see, okay, we launch a campaign on social media, we see an uplift. Okay, great. But you're really still looking at things in isolation. You're not looking at the overall journey and the overall customer experience. You're starting to connecting the dots a little bit, but you're still not quite clear on what the next steps are. And I think the big thing is that different levels of the organization are going to see different results coming from it. So you could have the social team saying, okay, yeah, we're doing great, we got great engagement, we grew our followers. And then you have the sales team saying, we're not driving more sales, right? Well, you're telling us that your campaigns are working, but we're not seeing the end result of those campaigns, right? So this is really an indicator of, hey, you might be more in the emerging state, and you can start to point more directionally towards performance, but still you're not quite able to quantify it yet.
That actually sounds like, and you would know better, but it sounds like where a lot of our clients are at.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of clients tend to come in around this stage.
Yeah. Especially on the marketing side, where it's like, oh, their marketing campaigns are doing well, but then there's like sort of that gap in their sales. This is an aside question, but do you have to sort of get involved there?
I think it needs to. At some point it needs to, and it depends on who we're working with, right? But yes, I think that conversation needs to happen, because for a organization to be digitally transformed, there needs to be a connection across teams. It can just not happen within one team and then the other team is not aligned. That's why it is so important that executive and leadership within an organization is truly know what the priority is for the next, let's say, couple of years, right? And making sure everyone is on the same boat. With sales specifically, I find that is one of the most important conversations, because that way you can truly track your campaigns from beginning to end, potentially with a click. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're tracking that sale that came through, because a lot of these clients, they want to see, we're investing this amount of money into the campaigns, how much are we getting out of that? And sales and marketing teams should definitely be working together to ensure that we're providing accurate information.
I am a client at Jan Kelly, or it sounds like I might be a client at Jan Kelly, and now my interest is piqued. What's sort of the next step?
Yeah, so there's two other steps within the digital maturity framework. So the next one would be connected. It's more of an integrated view of your customer's journey. You're not marketing one-to-one yet, but you're starting to have a stronger understanding of what's going in. So you do an integrated campaign. You're not looking at just paid social, paid search. You're looking at everything more holistically. And you also might have your customer or CRM data integrated at this point. You had asked this question earlier, right? Around, is it just marketing? Well, it's marketing to an extent, right? You also need that customer database. That all needs to be integrated within this framework in order for you to really get to the connected and the multi-moment stage, which is, kind of the peak, if you will, of the whole digital transformation. So at this point, you're really a well-oiled machine. You have your own sort of database that you're feeding all of this data in from all your marketing, all of your CRM, any offline touch points that you might have from your sales teams. And here is where, data scientists really start having a lot of fun. You start doing predictive modeling. So you can start actually predicting outcomes based on things that you've ran in the past. So you want to talk about how can you predict future success? Well, you get to this multi-moment stage and you can start running machine learning and predictive algorithms to actually determine where your company could go. You put $1 in, well, we can expect 2x out, because you actually have a model that's been trained with data that you've been putting into the system. So it's really sort of the heart of this digital transformation and where companies want to go, and ultimately determining what is your customer's lifetime value, right? I think that's sort of the golden ticket. Everyone talks about customer LTV, but have you really figured out what your customer's lifetime value is? I think that's really, I knew.
I was like, LTV.
I know, I'm terrible with the acronyms. We all are. So, LTV, customer lifetime value.
Huh. And how accurate do you think these predictive models?
Oh, they are accurate. It's data. It's data. And they're models. It's data. There is a system in place. I will say there is always a margin of error, obviously. It's people behind it, and there are models, statistical models that are used to calculate this. But it's pretty accurate. That's how we help organizations fulfill their goals, right? So, yes, Chief, it's accurate.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not, but I'm curious. Do you have any examples of this is like the peak multi-moment? Multi-moment. That's the highest level, right?
Yes.
Am I jumping ahead?
A little bit, but
I think it's good. Yeah,
we can jump
yeah.
into it. You know, one of them is customer lifetime value, right? You know, I think there's a lot of emphasis put onto it. Everyone's heard it's exponentially more expensive to gain a new customer rather than to retain an existing one. It can be anywhere from 5 to 25%. So really understanding like how long this customer will stay with you is really powerful, right? So, you know, you can spend more time nurturing and keeping those relationships strong rather than constantly having to acquire new customers all the time. If you're more on the consumer packaged goods, so CPG, something called a basket analysis, you can look to see what items are typically cross-sold together. So if somebody buys some face cream, well, what complements that face cream, right? What is the extra product that somebody would buy? So whether or not it's on your e-commerce store, hey, this was frequently bought together. You might see it on Amazon, right? So these are all the sort of things when you have all this data that you can start providing customers more value because you understand their complementary products, but also increasing your average, you know, cart value too. And another one that you see a lot as well is what is really the benefit of maybe brand advertising versus direct response. So we get this a lot. Like this is a really common question because a lot of people understand I put out a direct response campaign, I have a promo or an offer, I see sales coming right away. Maybe we don't have the same margins, but I see immediate sales. And then it's like, well, why do we want to focus on brand advertising? You know, I don't see the same impact, right? So you can start to do these correlation analysis. So we actually did this with one of our clients. So when we looked at sort of brand campaigns alone, if people only had a touch point with the brand once or a couple times, their sales rate, you know, was 0.26%. I'm just using rough numbers here. And then if they were exposed to more of a direct response campaign, they purchased at 0.61%. Now, what if they were exposed to both brand advertising and direct response advertising? Well, we can actually see that the increase is 61% higher. So this is something you can actually take back to senior management and say, listen, we do brand, we actually see better results in our direct response campaigns, right? So again, not looking at things in isolation, but what is the overall positive impact between all of your marketing efforts?
And I think if you look at what Travis was touching in the beginning is opportunity. I think it opens the door as a business also to evaluate what are the pieces that I might be missing within my organization that can still help me serve better the audience. He briefly touched on Amazon. Amazon has a very developed way to understand what the end user needs and evaluating the data and understanding, okay, if I bought this bottle of water and I have specific characteristics, then what are the other things that makes my life easier? And within that list of products or services, are there any of those services that I as an organization can still provide, which is where the cross-selling comes into play. And a lot of these organizations are using this data to even come up with new products or services that they might have not even thought about it. Hadn't they analyzed the data?
So you both obviously work with a lot of brands who I assume after working with you have decided it's time to transition. It's time to transform. They're doing their customer journey mapping and they're analyzing their tech stack and all of these things. What do you think common challenges are, problems are, missteps are when people are like, okay, let's go?
I know. Yeah. I think we all get excited, like, let's go, right? Yeah. So I think that's a good thing when it happens. Now, the issue starts when you as a leader of a organization start to do everything at once. When you're trying to start and make all these changes without even preparing your staff, your team, and your overall culture, right? So I will say that will be the first mistake. And then the second thing is, as a leadership of your business, make sure that you know why you want to do it. And this is key. Why? Because in many cases, we want to do something, but we really don't know what's the purpose behind it. We're just following a trend, and as a result, you get lost. Then everyone does. So a good way that I usually recommend to do it is ask yourself, what are the things that you want to change today that can help you get to your specific goal within the next 3 to 5 years? That's an exercise that you can do with your close team. Speak about it. Make sure that you are fully aligned on this before you go ahead and deploy anything. Another element I already touched base on this is not nurturing your organization and the staff to understand that it's a continuous change. We've been in marketing for what? You said 12 years. I've been 10 years and up. Mm-hmm. And there is not 1 year that we don't say we need to continue moving along because this transformation never ends. So make sure that, yes, you get everything started, but make sure that you continue to feed that as well so that everyone who comes into the organization gets on board, but those who are in it continues to innovate.
Right. So is there a risk of people biting off more than they can chew?
100%.
And then like just not being able to sustain?
100%. And I think that's why it fails. Because it is a heavy lift when you're starting to change the full way that a organization works. So doing it just at once and not having clear view where you want to go really affects that. And then the third element, and I don't want to mess it up because I think it's key, and Travis touched base on it earlier, is your customer. You want to make sure that you're doing this so that you can find a better way to serve your audience. And the reason is I always say that you can have the best product, you can have the best website, you can have the best campaigns. And in fact, you can have an amazing agency like Jen Kelly that can help you manage those advertising, right? But if you are not focusing on helping your audience, it's going to fail. Yeah. So use that as a reference always. If you're doing a digital transformation, what can I do in my organization to be able to help them more? When you don't do that, you might be digitally transformed. You might be able to have all the data integrated. You might be able to have the best analysis and statistical programs out there. But then when the data comes out and the analysis comes out, and if you don't really understand your audience, you'll be like, what do I do with this now?
It'll just be disappointing data.
It'll be, your data is disappointing.
I'm not mad.
It's a good point, right? You see a lot of companies like, hey, we're ready to start doing predictive modeling. We're ready to start doing advanced analysis, but they may not even have sort of the base level stuff in place yet. And just because you have all the MarTech in the world, you have all the skill sets in the world, unless you've really kind of foster that and develop processes internally, you can never get there. And even once you do get there, doesn't mean you can't fall out of it either, right? It's not like a finish line, okay, great, we just ran the marathon and we're done. You constantly have to be growing and evolving. As people change, team members change, that's when falling out of sort of this multi-moment stage is really, really easy to happen. And it takes work. Marketing doesn't necessarily become easier, but you can learn quicker and you can become smarter. But just because you get there doesn't mean you can always stay there either.
Yeah, that makes sense. So to set people up for success then, what advice do you give people who are just starting to transform? And I don't even mean from like nascent to emerging. It could any stage to any stage.
So the biggest thing to take away is that digital transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's an evolving process. Alirio, kind of set it up pretty well, where it takes multiple years. You need to have sort of this long-term goal and vision, especially if you might be in the early stages. I think be strategic with what you're doing. Make sure that you're adopting the right tools and technologies, right? There's so many different tools out there, and not all of them are going to be right for your business. What might be right for a B2B company is not going to be right for a B2C company. So take your time, do your due diligence, and invest in the proper tools and in people as well as processes as you're going along the way. And, ask yourself why and what for. Why are we doing this? At the end of the day, you're trying to provide better, customer experiences. You're trying to get down to almost a one-to-one marketing. Just because you may not have, enterprise budgets doesn't mean you can't think strategically along this lines of the framework, right? I think that's really a big misconception. It's like, oh, well, we're not a multinational. Why is this important to me? But like these principles and concepts still do apply to all these businesses, right? Being able to connect the dots and see what your customers' needs are and addressing those needs in more effective ways. I think what we're all trying to do as marketers and as businesses these days.
I like the part where you say it doesn't matter if you're a very small corporate or like business or a large corporation. And I believe that if you're a small one, you should even do it more because your dollars are less. So you need to make sure that you're investing them properly and that you're getting the most value out of them. And I think that's where the misconception comes from, that they think, oh, my budget is so small that I don't really have the budget to go and do all these crazy things. I think the beauty of digital transformation is that there is a space for everyone. So if you're listening to this and you feel that you're too small to start getting into this, the reality is there is always room. What you need to do is to get the proper guidance so that you can set proper priorities and start from there. What are the small things that you can change today that can have a benefit later on?
I'm kind of interested in the one-to-one marketing piece. Give me a little intro of what that kind of looks like.
The easiest way to maybe explain one-to-one marketing, I'll use the consumer packaged good example again. Maybe you've signed up, you're a member of an email list, right? So, the company like knows you in some way or fashion based on purchase behavior, whatever it might be. You're able to actually deliver more customized personal messaging at scale, right? So, I think the old way of thinking of one-to-one marketing is, like, oh, hey, Alirio, go meet them in person. That's one-to-one, right? But being able to do one-to-one marketing at scale and at mass, when you're a larger company, it's just not possible to do that sort of one-to-one, especially if the products or the services you might be selling don't warrant a face-to-face communication for everything that you're doing. So that's a bit of an example of what one-to-one would be. So, like, what did you buy last time? Oh, hey, you haven't purchased this product in the last couple of months. So you're due for a refill on your face cream. Yes, face cream, I use some too, right? So like those sort of things, like personalization and providing sort of that unique experience, which is really what some of the larger companies are doing quite well. And it's starting to become the norm, right? It's what consumers are expecting from brands, regardless of the size.
And many organizations think that could be disruptive, right? Like a lot of them are like, oh no, if I sent another email because they opened the previous one and they clicked on it and they added to the cart and then they abandoned the cart, if I send another email, they're going to feel like I'm harassing them. And that's not true. The whole idea of this is that you want to make sure that you're being relevant to them, that you're truly putting in front of them something that helps them. And then as a result, you'll be able to sell more of your units, right? So do never think that, that because you're trying to get them through the buying journey, don't think that it's going to be something that is going to bother them. You need to be careful. Obviously, you don't want to, create fatigue on things that are not valuable for them. But definitely you can do it. It's more of personalizing your messages, making sure that you're really putting in front of them what they need versus what you want them to buy.
Like a good email is a good email. It doesn't really matter how often you send it. Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about this multi-moment thing. It makes a ton of sense when you use the examples of like retail and consumer packaged goods and things like that. From a B2B perspective, I'm like, oh, I don't totally know how that translates. Like, can you paint a picture of a multi-moment B2B company? Like, what's happening in their marketing and sales?
So if you're doing building or construction supplies and, there's, they order so many of one product, like, hey, well, you know what, in order to build this properly, you probably should have this. Like maybe it's a safety issue, or maybe it's you need this sort of brace to help because of the span of the building that you're trying to create, right? There's many different ways you could do it from a B2B perspective. It's just understanding your customer in a better way to be able to offer them these products and services that, hey, this wasn't scoped or quoted. You might want this because this is regulation within this state, right? I think B2B is obviously going to be a little bit trickier, I guess, but yeah.
Maybe it doesn't have to be tricky. Maybe it's just not one size fits all. So your tactics will evolve with what the data tells you that your customer needs. So
exactly. You said data. See, you went from not using data
I'm
to say data today.
I'm just...
Yes, I think
that's the whole point of this,
right?
To understand your customer better. And what
so
they need.
it might not be the case that they do need this. You might also be interested in this thing, because it's like, well, we actually just offer services and that's not how our business works. Yes. But it could be like, right, but the delivery mechanism of whatever value we provide changes because we actually learned that people prefer texts over emails or whatever.
Yeah, like we had a specific case with one of our clients which works in the B2B landscape, and COVID again pushed them to make this transformation quicker. Businesses were still going online to do their research. They were still going online to find the products they wanted to provide to their end users. So not being ready for things like this will not allow you to retain your customers, even if they're businesses, nor will allow you to, serve them the way that we should be doing. In this case specifically, we help them go from not having a proper setup to being able to provide a full service online to serve businesses in a better way.
Right. So it comes back to strategy and being intentional and planning for what you actually want to accomplish.
I thought of another example for B2B. If it's a consumable product, something that has a set shelf life, understanding how long that product is going to be good for. This customer is going to need this every 3 to 5 years, if you don't understand what your customer's lifetime value is, if you don't understand, what we should be having somebody reaching out because we know that this product has reached its useful life cycle, you're just leaving money on the table. Like, it may not even be the same person that you dealt with when the sale was initially done, right? So once that, individual has left the organization, how do you know to ever follow up with them saying, oh, they need this new consumable product again? So again, it goes back to customer lifetime value.
Well, now you bring that up. I have an example from this weekend. So where I live, the property manager is the people who change the windows and the doors for the full townhomes. And this is a business trying to find services from another business. And surprisingly, a lot of the brands they had in the lists did not even have a website, did not even have an Instagram account, did not even have a Facebook account. They only had the sales rep contact that they have used 10 or 20 years ago. A lot of these brands lost the opportunity to generate millions of dollars because they did not have anything set up. So that's an advice for everyone who's listening today. Do not take for granted that because you're serving B2B, you don't need to be fully transformed digitally.
Yeah, that's very interesting because as we were talking about the stage 1, the nascent stage, I was like, how many people are actually in that stage? And I'm like, oh my gosh, there are people even before that stage.
Yes.
That is mind-blowing. It's sad. So before we go, I will ask for your last words on digital maturity, where we should go, how people should go about doing this. What's your advice?
Where they should go? Can't tell you, right? No, I think the first thing is you need to start as soon as possible. Like, you shouldn't be waiting on evaluating where your organization falls into. You need to get that assessment, right? Because we did give a lot of tips and idea of what each stage represents and where you might fall in. But we want to make sure that, that if you want to start the digital maturity process, that you're being guided, and we're more than happy to being able to provide that support if needed.
Okay, well, there you have it. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. And now it's question time, live question and answer. And so type your questions in the chat.
Bring it
And
on.
Travis and Alirio would be happy to answer them. See you in literally 1 second.